The intellectual aspect of the new evangelization kind of reinforces your missionary work as a lay person. We're going to have 4 sessions. This is the first one. I thought of cancelling it because of the weather, but I cannot move it because after this we have like all the penance services, and so I was doing it or not doing it at all. So I'm glad we're here. So session 1, we're going to speak of the intro to the new evangelization and the relationship between faith and the sacraments. That's going to be tonight. But let's begin with the prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Let us enter into God's presence after a day of work. Jesus says in the Gospel today that before we say anything, He already knows what we need. Lord, we believe that You are real, that You love us, and that You have a deep concern for each one of us and for all humanity. Lord, send Your Holy Spirit upon all of us, upon all the church, and upon everyone who is in this planet whom You created out of love to be with You. Lord, give us a spirit of hope, dispel any darkness or discouragement, that we may trust in Your victory. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit,
as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So before we begin, just to test the waters, I get a sense of the audience, like not everyone, but maybe 4 or 5, like if you can say why you are here, like why you sign up. You can raise your hand, say your name, and why you are interested in this topic. Or maybe what you would be interested to learn as well. Yes.
My name is Catherine, and I'm here because I've got a 14-year-old son who I need to be able to speak to him in a way that I can't yet speak to him about our faith.
Thank you.
My name is Ignacio, and I'm here because I tried to evangelize a friend of mine, and I was a dismal failure. Friendship is over. I'm hoping I can learn something.
Good. Yes.
I'm here because most of my family is either non-believers or just marginal Christians. And in particular, I have a brother who left a church similar to our theology and is in another church, and he's very into evangelism in his church. So I thought this would be a good bridge to talk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
2 more. Yes.
I'm Keith, and last December we took a trip to Australia, and we were in a rural area in New South Wales, and I could see what the future of the church would be if we didn't have new evangelization. We had a beautiful church built probably 60, 100 years ago with just a handful of people, mostly an older congregation. That's the future. That's what the church is facing.
Thank you. Last one.
Jack, and we are here with 3 other couples. We get together and get together for years studying the Bible and different aspects, and so we're all here open to learn about evangelism.
Good. Well, those gives me a great sense of what at least some of you think, and I think hopefully the course answers those questions. Matthew 28, verse 16. The 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain to which Jesus had ordered them. When they saw Him, they worshipped, but they doubted. Then Jesus approached and said to them, "All power in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always until the end of the age." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
This is what is known as the Great Commission of the Lord, also known in Catholic circles as the Great Omission. Because the Great Commission of Christ, before his ascension, was entrusted to the apostles the work of continuing his work. If you remember from those who did the theology class on Christology, we said that, can you see from the back, like John, Mary, the red? We spoke of the church as that river of life that flows through history and makes present today all what Jesus taught, all what Jesus did. So the person of Christ continues to be alive in the presence of the Christian community, the church. And what are the things Jesus said at the end of his life? What are the 4 alls?
All authority in heaven.
All power, good.
All nations.
All nations, the universality of the mission.
All that I have commanded you.
All the teaching of Christ.
And to observe all.
Yes. Mary doesn't say all, but it says the same meaning. Always. All days. No? So, till the end of time. So Jesus says go, as in many places in the Gospels, many times Jesus says go. And I will be with you all days. Go and teach all. Go to all nations. And you will have all power. And this is very interesting, the 4 actions that Christ asks the church to do throughout history. What are the 4 actions briefly mentioned? Baptize.
Make disciples.
Make disciples. Teach.
Keep the presence.
Yes, I changed a little bit, but I will summarize it in love, no? So when you think of what does the church do, those are the 4 main actions that the church should exercise. We should make disciples, we should baptize, we should teach, and we should love. Or more maybe common to use the language of the works of mercy. That's kind of the totality of the life of the church. Teaching, not only baptize, the sacramental system, like weddings and all the sacraments, no? Sacramentalize if you want. So when you do all these 4 things, that keeps, as Ricardo was saying, the presence of Christ alive. And all should be present. Also, this is kind of I think it has like an order to itself. Although you can maybe begin in one and then move to the others, this is one of the main points we're going to make today. The need of prioritizing and being more intentional about making disciples. Why? Because we will see that the beginning of the Christian faith should be faith. By making disciples, Christ is implying leading people to faith in Him. And out of that encounter with Him flows the desire for the sacraments, the desire for His teaching, and then as an expression of that, going out to love. I would like to share with you some numbers, but please don't die of despair or discouragement. They're just numbers that you already see them in life, but sometimes numbers help you realize what Keith was saying. Where if we don't react, I'm going to explain this a little more, but if we don't react, what the church is getting? It's what is, like many people call today, the sacramental crisis. Basically, for a long time, the church has been kind of making an emphasis in these two, the teaching and this sacramentalizing. You know, like people come to a church basically to receive the sacraments. But we have been seeing in the last 30 to 40 years that this is kind of declining in a very fast pace. These are numbers. Okay. The sacramental crisis. Can you see from the back? So this is from 2000 to 2010. The number of infant baptisms per year. This is in the US. This is an institute called CARA, the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, CARA. They do all these statistics. So in the last 10 years, the number of infant baptisms went from 16,000 to 9,000, 42.4%. Yesterday someone emailed me, Farah, I have these prayer intentions for my birthday. Please pray for my sister. She has 2 kids. She's not baptizing them. Adult baptisms from 1,442 to 700, 51% decrease. Full communion to the church, 43.6 decrease. Catholic marriages, and we're going to see more of this, 45.3 decrease. Interfaith marriages, 52.7 decrease. Funerals, 10,000 versus 9,000, so 9.2 decrease. I think this is because people kind of respect the intention of their parents. But the next generation, I think you're going to see a great decrease in funerals. Parishes, 313,273, so 12.8% decrease. In these dioceses, we have not closed many parishes, but it's a reality in many dioceses of the US. They're merging parishes like crazy. Like I remember in Detroit, I think they merged, like in 1 year they merged like 100 parishes. Imagine what is it, because bishops don't have priests to cover the parishes. I told you, don't get discouraged yet. So this is from another source, similar, but more 2015. This is from the book Intentional Discipleship, about young adults going to Mass. So when you see the older ages, 45%, those who are age 65 and plus, the builders, 45% attend a Sunday Mass. Attending Sunday Mass in this context means once a month. Boomers, 20% going to Mass. Gen X, 13% going to Mass. Millennials, only 10% going to Mass. So if you think and if you visit many churches, many parishes in the US, you will see this reality. It's kind of an inverted pyramid, where most of the population is older people. And the tip of the pyramid is the millennials, but it's a smaller generation. It's a smaller portion. So what is going to happen, as Keith was saying, in 20, 30 years? And this is a reality including immigration. Now I'm going to show a video of Robert Barron, because immigration in a sense kind of hides the numbers, because most of those Spanish-speaking coming to Mass are younger. You go to 1 p.m. Mass, a lot of young families, a lot of kids. And this is a reality in this parish as well. We also are kind of saved a little bit because of the college campus, but you go to any regular parish and you have this pyramid, of smaller percentage of millennials going and a higher percentage of builders going. In this presentation, I don't want to point fingers. It's not the builders are bad and the millennials it's just, I think, numbers and reality. This I see as a priest is so true, like less Catholic marriages, and those who come to get married in the church, they're like super cold. In 2010, the number of Catholic marriages fell from 400,000, I don't know if 400,000. Well, it fell a lot. But in 1972, 80% of adult Catholics who were married was 80%. In 2010, 53%. And of young adult Catholics who were married, now only 38%. Like, cohabitation is the standard nowadays. So, this and other numbers, this is from the Intentional Discipleship book. In 2009, for each Catholic that entered a church, 4 left. Bishop Burns says that it's even higher, 1 to 6. And I want to show you. This is a very interesting. I haven't seen it all, but have you seen the movie or read the book, The Case for Christ?
Yeah.
Well, in that book, William Craig is one of the most well-known, not Catholic but Protestant evangelists. He debated against many atheists. So this institute, Reasonable Faith, invited him, William Craig, that we are going to see, and Robert Barron, both to speak. And they spoke for 2 hours. But the last 10 minutes or 20 minutes is a dialogue between Barron, Bishop Barron, and William Craig. And William Craig asked him 2 questions. Many questions, but I want to share 2 of them. The first one is, how is the church doing in training Catholics to become evangelizers? And this is what he says.
What are Catholics doing in this area to train their people? I'm familiar with what's going on in the evangelical subculture, but what's happening in the Catholic world to train people in these things we've talked about tonight?
Not enough, honestly. It's true. And I was a seminary rector for a long time, a seminary professor for a long time, rector for 3 years. I would always try to bring an apologetic element into my teaching. When I became rector, I said, I was in charge, I said, well, could I ask everybody here, Bible people, systematic people, the moral theologians, I said, I'll tell you exactly what's bugging, especially young people today. And I went through the list of the thing. I said, could you bring an element of this into your instruction so that they are not just learning the history of systematic theology and so on, but they know how to use it to address the concerns of people today. And I got pushback from the faculty because that old prejudice against apologetics, we're beyond catechism here, we're beyond that. Well, as the ship's going under, we better get with it. So I would say, honestly, not enough. I've tried to jump into the breach in some ways with the work that I'm doing. And I have found, I think as you have too, that when you do it in this public way, you bring it out, people, they respond.
Yes.
And even on YouTube, I told a story before that when I first started doing videos on YouTube, I didn't know people could make comments. Well, I discovered quickly. And 95% of them are negative. People don't write in and say, oh God, I love you, my Father Barron, and what a wonderful argument. So, but I came in time to appreciate that very deeply because here people would never darken the door of a church. But yet, I had them there. I was able to get some traction. And all right, well, what do you object to exactly? Let's have a conversation. So, and then the numbers began to increase as people got interested, as they have in years. So I think that's a sign, very encouraging sign. That if we do it, this apologetics in a public way, people will respond. But I think we're not doing nearly enough in the Catholic Church.
I see. Let me ask you this. Can you give us any prognostication of what's the future of the Roman Catholic Church in the United States?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of statistical studies, and we're flourishing still because of a large immigrant population in our country. So a lot of the Filipinos and Hispanics, of course, who've come into our church are keeping it sort of going. If we took all the immigrants out of the equation, we'd probably be at more European levels in terms of participation, mass attendance. The numbers are hovering around 20-25%, and that's even with the large immigrant population. If you took that out, I'm afraid we'd be down to that sort of 10% range that you find in Europe. So that's a discouraging thing. It is true today that, what's the stat? For every one person joining the Catholic Church, 6 are leaving. So that's a disquieting thing, to be sure. And the bishops certainly are aware of that. I've been arguing for a long time, it ought to be our number one concern. Now, having said that, and I don't want to gainsay any of it, it's also, as you look more broadly around the Catholic Church, not just from the West, but you see this burgeoning growth in Africa. You see burgeoning growth in Asia, in Latin America. So we can get a sort of myopic Western view of things where we get sort of down, but Christianity, and also in the Protestant forms too, is burgeoning in many parts of the world. So that gives me hope. When I was doing this Catholicism series some years ago, this documentary, I made a point of going all over the world. And one of the most memorable, for me anyway, visits was to Namugongo, which is outside of in Uganda, where we celebrate the Ugandan martyrs every year, June the 3rd. And 500,000 people come to that spot. And that's where Charles Luongo was martyred. So here's this young man put to death brutally, 1886. Anyone watching would have said, well, there's the end of Catholicism in Uganda. And now 500,000 come, and these hundreds of millions. So I take great hope from that, looking more globally at Catholicism. Though in the West, it's some hard times.
What about in the area of vocations?
Again, we're okay. We're holding our own in our country.
I think Robert Barron is a great example of the new evangelization. We're going to see tonight the thing of the new methods. And he's someone who thought outside the box. I don't know if you know the story of him when he was in Chicago. He asked his, who was the Archbishop of Chicago at that time? Cardinal George. He says, can you not put me in a parish, so for 3 years I can develop this project of the videos about the Catholic faith. I think that's where the church has to be. Or at least one of the aspects of a deeper presence in the media. And he said yes, and for 3 years he was working on developing the videos. Any reaction on the dialogue between them? Something that stood out? Yes?
Well, one thing I was thinking about is that you and the St. John Society picked a good mission field. The United States, obviously, Catholicism is on the wane, and in other places it's on the rise. And so it seems that your society has picked a good spot to come because we're in need.
It's an interesting comment. I will qualify it because I do agree with what he's saying, that immigration masks some aspect of decline in the church, so kind of you don't see the decline so much. But at the same time, in the US, I think there's great hope for what is happening in the church. And there are many things happening in this country that are not happening in other countries. From excellent Catholic universities, a lot of movements working on new evangelization, like Robert Barron, Matthew Kelly, Focus. Some flourishing orders like Dominican Sisters. So, although we're going to speak more about this, like you see this decline and the increase of secularism and moral relativism and less people coming to church, but at the same time, I think there's seeds of hope. So, but yes, I agree with you that there's a lot of work and mission to do in this country. Yes. Yes.
I think from my experience of the U.S.
people, the people that I have met, as opposed to Australia or New Zealand, there is an interest in spirituality, even though it might not be, I mean, that you might say declining, there is an openness and a desire for spirituality. It might be directed at something different.
Here or in
Here,
other
here,
countries?
in this
Yes,
country,
yes.
I see that.
Whereas that's not so much in those other two places.
Right, right. There's not that interest, or it's not part of. I see a thirst, I see a desire for good.
Well, in this book, The Intentional Discipleship, Sherry Weddell, I remember in the time of Father John, someone came to it was a parish mission, the Catherine of Siena Institute, and Father Mike, who was a Dominican priest, he came. So he is also kind of helping her in this. Anyway, in this book, she says that 1/3 of Catholics who leave, they live for another faith, and they're seeking a deeper spirituality. That's amazing, no? That we have the fullness of faith, but some people don't find that fullness of spirituality in the Catholic Church. Yes, John?
What's the goal of the new evangelization? It's not, is it just to have more people advance?
That's a very good question. We will go at the end, yes, to that question. Yes. Yes.
I talked to my daughter today. She lives in New Hampshire, and yesterday she took her son to an orientation to the priesthood. And there were 3 boys there. Two were 16 and her son was 15. And they were homeschoolers. So that's the point. I don't know how that works.
Well, that's what one of the things Baron says, that in like some cities where the family life is transmitted in the faith, there are more vocations. So I think that's a very important point of the new evangelization. Yes?
Well, I was looking at that though, like that 50 years ago there were so many more people attending Mass and getting the sacraments. I don't think that necessarily shows that they had a deep faith in Jesus.
Good. Well, I would like to conclude this first section with this point. I do think that we have been using the church to, like, people coming to the sacraments, like for First Communion, for baptism, marriages, and that was one of the reasons why people came to the church, in a general way. So whenever you generalize, you're unfair with reality. But what we're seeing is that that's no longer the case. Or in the next 10, 20 years, 30 the most, like, we're going to kind of lose that sense of cultural Catholicism, like coming for the sacraments. And I think that's one of the goals of the new evangelization, to emphasize a bit more the need of leading people to faith, of making disciples. Sherry Weddell in this book says, in the 21st century, cultural Catholicism is dead as a retention strategy, because God has no grandchildren. In the 21st century, we have to foster intentional Catholicism rather than cultural Catholicism. And that's where we're going to see how to do that and what is the church doing to do that. So before we go on a break, I would like you, we're going to read the text of Pope Francis. As you know, he wrote Evangelization, the joy of the gospel. And he has, although he doesn't use so much the word the new evangelization, in many places he kind of fosters this church in mission. Who wants to read text number 1?
Number 3, is that what?
Number 1, text 1 is
We cannot passively and calmly wait in our church buildings. We need to move from a pastoral ministry of mere conservation to a decidedly missionary pastoral ministry. I dream of a missionary option, that is, a missionary impulse capable of transforming everything, so that the church's customs, ways of doing things, times and schedules, language and structures can be suitably channeled for the evangelization of today's world rather than for her self-preservation. The renewal of structures demanded by pastoral conversion can only be understood in this light, as part of an effort to make them more mission-oriented, to make ordinary pastoral activity on every level more inclusive and open, to inspire in pastoral workers a constant desire to go forth, and in this way to elicit a positive response from all those whom Jesus summons to friendship with himself. As John Paul II once said to the bishops of Oceania, all renewal in the church must have mission as its goal if it is not to fall prey to a kind of ecclesial introversion.
The rest, all of us.
All of us are called to take part in this new missionary going forth. Each Christian and every community must discern the path that the Lord points out, but all of us are asked to obey his call to go forth from our own comfort zone in order to reach all the peripheries in need of the light of the gospel.
That's Pope Francis. That word, the peripheries, is very common to him, but basically not only him, but all the last popes, from Pope VI, Paul VI, then John Paul II with great intensity, Benedict XVI, and now Pope Francis, they speak of this need of a new evangelization, and it's connected with this fostering intentional Catholicism rather than cultural Catholicism. And kind of a motto of the new evangelization, or in many places here in the US, not only in the Catholic context, also in the Protestant context, is the need from moving from a maintenance church, like keeping the customers, those who are coming, and feeding them, to a mission-oriented church, of thinking and reaching those who are not coming. And this is not so easy because you don't see those who are not coming. Like, those who are coming, they can complain, but those who are not coming, they don't complain because you don't see them, so it doesn't hurt so much. So going back to the question of John, it's not about bringing people back to Mass so we can pay the bills again and raise the collections. It's about the commandment of the Lord. This call of Jesus to share the light that is in the church with all. So we can do a...
Father,
yes?
That first paragraph was from whom? Where it says EG 27, is that?
That's all Pope Francis. EG stands from Evangelium Gaudium, the joy of the gospel.
So both of these are from Pope.
All are from Pope Francis, the joy of the gospel, number 20 and 27. Good. We take a very, very brief break. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a small personal exercise, and I can give you a brief context of it. So I don't know if you see from the back, but we said that Jesus asked the church to make disciples, to lead people to faith, to baptize them and lead them into the fullness of the sacramental life, then to teach them all what he taught, and then the fruit of that is that it will be his love in action in the world. So there is a connection, there is a link between faith and the sacraments. And you can testify to this. There are two extremes, if you want. One extreme is to kind of see the sacraments in a magical way, like you baptize them and they're changed, or you anoint them before they die, and that changes everything. So to put an emphasis on that side, in a sense. That could lead in a way to see the sacraments in a magic or superstitious way. Another extreme is just to put the emphasis on the act of faith, only like what we do. So our notion of transformation is what could be like a marriage. Like we need the yes of God and the yes of the human person for a sacrament to be fruitful. This is summarized in what the church calls the ex opere operato and the ex opere operantis. Now we are going to read it. But basically, the sacraments, they work because of the power of God, but the fruitfulness of the sacrament changes according to the disposition of the one who receives the sacrament. So if you think of the example of the yes of God and the yes of humanity and marriage, the yes of God is always there. God always wants to bless us, and what is weak always is the yes of humanity. So the point here is to analyze a little bit the connection between faith and the sacraments, and more precisely between faith and baptism. Because that's one of the problems of the sacramental crisis. That we are kind of dispensing the sacraments, or people are coming to the sacraments without faith. And now they are doing it because of like a cultural thing. Okay, my parents are Catholic, how can I not marry in the Catholic Church? So what we said is that the church needs to foster intentional discipleship. That people come to faith, and because of coming to faith, they will go to the sacraments. Because without faith, in the long run, people will not come to the sacraments. So now what I want you is to read. First is a kind of a summary of the catechism, the connection between faith and sacraments, and then I put 4 scenarios of faith and baptism. So I give you maybe 5 to 10 minutes to read, and then we'll share. We're going to summarize the reading. But before that, I want to show you the theology of Nacho Libre. I don't know if you have seen. You will see in this short video the freedom that is needed for baptism.
I'm a little concerned about your salvation and stuff. How come you're not baptized? Because I never got around to it, okay? Tonight, we're going up against Satan's gate again. I just thought it would be a good idea if you...
Okay, that's the first lesson. That's how we should not do it. So, there's a connection between the sacraments and faith, and an aspect of people wanting to come. We can talk more about like what is a prudential living, no? It's sometimes like parents want their kids to be confirmed, and they bring them no matter what. So I think there's an aspect, there's an age where people have to choose, no? And in the long run, the fruitfulness of sacraments, they depend a lot on the faith of people. As we said, the sacrament needs a yes of God and the yes of the person. The divine yes in Catholic theology is called ex opere operato. The sacraments acts ex opere operato, by virtue of the saving work of Christ. So there's an emphasis on the primacy of God acting through the sacrament. That's a beautiful thing of Catholic theology in contrast with maybe Protestant theology. But also it needs the disposition, no? The fruits of the sacraments depend on the disposition of the one who receives them. If you think of people who go to Mass, the host is the same for everyone. It's not like if we bring Pope Francis, the host would be more Jesus than if we have like Father Ignacio. The host is always the same. Or like you see kids receiving confirmation, the imposition of hands of the bishop is the same. On the side of God but the disposition is different. So the disposition is what, in a sense, kind of increases or decreases the reception of the fire. No? If you imagine that you have someone who is super on fire, is very close to God and has a great desire, has 8 units of devotion, but the fire of the Spirit or the reception of grace in whatever sacrament we think is 8 units. And if someone is very far away, well, 2 units of devotion will lead to a smaller fire. So that's why what Baron was saying, there's a great need of the church of having this, making disciples, leading people to faith as a priority in the church today. So the objective reality of the sacraments, the holiness of God at work in the sacraments, needs to be connected through faith with the subjective experience of the one who received it. So, like what God has given to us in the sacraments is an amazing gift. It's a gift of His life to us. But people need to receive it with faith. The Catechism speaks both of the faith and the sacraments, but also faith in connection with baptism. So first is the proclamation of the Word of God elicits a response of faith, which is inseparable from baptism. So you proclaim Jesus to people and they come to faith. And that's how baptism was in the early church. It was a consequence of the proclamation of Christ. So in the early church, in the first Christians, like people will come to baptism because they had faith. And then there was a gap between faith and baptism that we're going to speak. But also after baptism, either children or adults, faith must grow after baptism. The faith required for baptism, says the Catechism, is not a perfect and mature faith, but a beginning that is called to develop, both for an adult and for a child. So let's analyze 3 scenarios of the relationship between faith and baptism. The first one is Charlie the convert, like he was never baptized, somehow he came to faith. So faith precedes, leads to baptism and grows after baptism. So that will be like a perfect case scenario. Then we have Bobby, the super Catholic baby, like the seed of baptism is sown in the context of a Catholic family that allows the seed to naturally flourish. In a perfect scenario, because today the culture is so anti-Christian that it's not so easy. But I think this is true, I see the children of some of you, they receive baptism, they grow in a Catholic context, and the seed of baptism grows day after day. And in a sense, this is what happened in early Christians. So, if you want, the first stage was like a lot of people coming to faith, they were baptized as adults, but then like infant baptism grew, and Christianity became the religion of the empire. So it became more a cultural thing, but there was still like a Christian atmosphere in the world. So it was easier for kids who would receive baptism to make that seed flourish. But nowadays the scenario is very different. So we have this gap between faith and baptism. And that leads to the third scenario. Jeannie, the granddaughter, baptized in the kitchen sink. The grandmother baptized Jeannie, and the parents were not Catholic at all, so this baby received, if you have done this, you need to come and speak with me. So we register. This is more common than what you think, grandmothers baptizing their grandkids. in the kitchen sink. Anyway, the seed of baptism is sown in a non-Catholic atmosphere, so it will be need to reawaken later on through an act of faith. And this is a little of what the new evangelization is. It's in an aspect reawakening the fruits that were received, but the power of baptism that was never unleashed. Many Catholics live in this way, that they receive the seed of baptism, but maybe never re-engage themselves with the Catholic faith, and they need to unleash that power through faith. Yes?
Is that even valid? Is that a valid baptism?
Yes, it's a valid baptism, although the canon law says that there has to be some hope of the faith to develop after baptism. If there's no hope at all, I don't know if you can baptize someone. So, but yeah, I think it is a valid baptism, yes. Thomas Aquinas, in the Summa, he says this: in like manner, when a man is baptized, he receives the character, which is like a form, and he receives in consequence his proper effect, which is grace whereby all his sins are remitted. But this effect is sometimes hindered by insincerity. Wherefore, when the obstacle is removed by penance, baptism forthwith produces its effect. So basically he says, you can receive baptism, and a valid baptism, but as a Catholic you can live without the power of that baptism. Because maybe you received that baptism without faith, or because your faith never grew. So then when you come to faith, when you become a disciple, like if you receive first this, but you didn't have faith, like the power of baptism in your life, the fruits of baptism, the effects of the sacraments may be like bonded, may be blocked. So Thomas says, when you remove the obstacles, like the power of baptism flows into people. And I see this all the time. Many people who maybe are kind of like going like this in their faith, and all of a sudden through like the Alpha course or a retreat, or maybe just by their own personal decision, they begin to be more engaged in their faith, and the fruits of the sacraments begin to flourish in their lives. So a great task or a great aspect of the new evangelization is to lead people to faith so they can receive the sacraments with more fruitfulness. Any questions so far? Well, one last thing and I'll let you go. A brief introduction of what is the new evangelization. Some of you might have seen this video from Alpha Trainings. Bishop Barron has a series of videos called The New Evangelization, where he explains. I will give you 1 minute of it.
I used to go to church. Mum used to make me go to church. I don't go anymore.
It takes one generation from inadequate adult catechesis to non-church attendance, and then it only takes one more generation from non-church attendance to unbelief.
It's so hard to find God in the culture. It's so hard to find reason to believe in the culture.
One guy came to me, high-powered businessman, and he said, I'm retired to have my remote control on my golf clubs, and I'm dying. I'm dying.
People want mystery, they want art, they want culture, they don't want to just understand, they want to feel. And that's starting to happen.
I feel like I'm in a building movement, that it's growing, it's going somewhere.
Actually, I found something here. Come and see. It's like the Gospels, you know, that somebody has an encounter with Jesus Christ and they go and tell somebody else.
Events like World Youth Day, when you get millions of people in one place at the same time, really show in a way that no other religion can the universality and the deeply inspiring to human nature, the appeal that Catholicism has.
How central for us the claim that Jesus did not stay as good, but rather rose from the dead.
He's Christ is awesome. He's not there to take us out. He's not there to drag us down, but to love us and save us from the things that lay us down in life.
It's not simply a matter of science. It's a matter of living in the presence of something that is way beyond us.
For young people, really trying to take the faith out into the world, to understand it, know how to share it with joy.
This is a Catholic moment. Why? Because with the new media, you got this explosion of imagery.
On Twitter or on Facebook, then instantly that's a global audience and that's spreading really, really quickly.
Hello, I'm Carol Farrow. I'm a spokesperson for Catholic Voices.
Even if just one seed falls with one young person and they realise that actually God does love me, that's worth it.
We're not going to retreat to the mountain. We're a mass movement in exactly the way that Christ made a mass movement, and we're in it for the long haul, and we're in it to win.
I want to show this video because it shows like a taste of what the new evangelization should be, in the aspect of the church should not lose hope in the victory of God. Yes, secularism is growing, the numbers are going down, at least in the US, but God is shaping something new. And maybe in the future, going back to the question of John, like the church will be smaller. And I gave you an article that for homework you need to read about Pope Benedict and the future of the church. I think it's a prophetic. Yes, maybe it will be a smaller church in the future, but it will be stronger, and hopefully it will be more evangelizer church. So to finish, I would like you to read this text. As I said, the new evangelization is something that has been very much present in the, what they call the magisterium of the church, the teaching of the church in the last 50 years. If you want, we could even say that Vatican II was like a missionary council. One of the goals of the council was to make the light of Christ shine in the world. So, although they never spoke of the new evangelization, the Vatican Council documents, they spoke more than any other council in the history of the church of the word gospel, the good news of Jesus, and the word evangelization. So, in the last 50 years, the church has put in a deeper emphasis in the need of reacting, of doing things in a new way. Two documents that are kind of very important to understand, like what the church is teaching on the new evangelization, are Paul VI, the Evangelii Nunciandi on evangelization in the modern world. This was a prophetic document. It was like 20 years, 1972, I think, 1975. So 7 years after the council, there was some confusion about what was the call to evangelization and what was the role of the church in the world and the interaction between the church and the world. And Evangelii Nunciandi was a very prophetic document that is still very relevant today. All the things are online. We put Evangelii Nunciandi, Paul VI, and the other one is John Paul II, the mission of the Redeemer, Redemptoris Mission. So those are kind of two key documents to understand the new evangelization if you want to understand more. Obviously, the content of the new evangelization is not new. It's the totality of the work of Jesus. So, the teaching, the life, all what he said. The new evangelization is new in the aspect of content. The newness of the new evangelization is threefold. It's the audience, it's the agent, and it's what John Paul II calls the new methods, the new ardor, and the new expressions. So now I give you some time to read kind of extracts from different popes, and that will give us kind of a good introduction of what does it mean, what does the church mean by the new evangelization. So now we're going to Do you prefer to read it by yourself or in common? What do you prefer? Common? Yeah. Okay. Shoot.
Point you to what I'm reading.
New audience.
First, there is the situation which the church's missionary activity addresses. Peoples, groups, and socio-cultural contexts in which Christ and his gospel are not known, or which lack Christian communities sufficiently mature to be able to incarnate the faith in their own environment and proclaim it to other groups. This is mission ad gentes in the proper sense of the term.
So this is John Paul II speaking, and he's speaking in the Redentores Missio, the mission of the church, the mission of the Redeemer, number 33. So he's going to say that there are three types of mission. The first one is the mission ad gentes, the mission to those who know nothing about Christ. There are still places in the world where people know nothing about Christianity. And that's why, I don't know if you did for your homework, the reading of the intro to this encyclical. He says, like, the mission of Christ is only beginning.
Right.
One time Father Ivan said in a talk, in the banquet of the society, like, we have a very narrow perspective, but God has a bigger perspective. And for us, maybe 2017 years is a long time. But maybe history is just beginning. Maybe God intends 20,000 more years of humanity if we survive. So, the mission of Christ might still just beginning. There are places where they don't know much. Actually, I remember now, this graduate student. Do you know? Any of you know Rosa from China? So she's from China, and she says, far no, in China we cannot read the Bible. Right. When she searches in Google things of Christianity, they block her computer here in the US. I don't know how they do it, but her knowledge of Christianity is very basic, and that might be the case in many, many countries. So there's still a need for what the church is called the mission ad gentes. So when America was discovered, the Franciscan and Jesuit missionaries, they were sent to evangelize, and that was mission ad gentes, because we were kind of virgin lands when it came to Christianity. Go, second.
Secondly, there are Christian communities with adequate and solid ecclesial structures. They are fervent in their faith and in Christian living. They bear witness to the gospel in their surroundings and have a sense of commitment to the universal mission. In these communities, the church carries out her activity and pastoral care.
So this is the second kind of task, the mission ad gentes, then what the church calls pastoral care. So what happens basically in many parishes, through the catechism, religious ceremony, Christian life is communicated.
Thirdly, there is an intermediate situation, particularly in countries with ancient Christian roots, and occasionally in the younger churches as well, where entire groups of the baptized have lost a living sense of the faith, or even no longer consider themselves members of the church, and live a life far removed from Christ and his gospel. In this case, what is needed is a new evangelization or a re-evangelization.
So this was written, I think, in 1983 by John Paul II, no? How much more true is today? The re-evangelization of so many Catholics who are far removed from Christ and his gospel. They no longer consider themselves members of the church. It's so amazing, so many people that say to you, I was Catholic. I was Catholic. Let's jump to the new agent. So that's the first aspect of the newness of the new agent. A new audience. Not only mission ad gentes, not only pastoral care, but now there's a need of re-evangelizing many Catholics who have fallen away. One thing I want to clarify, it's important not to reduce the new entity, although the primary audience is Catholics who have fallen away. As Christians, we should care for everyone. Jesus says, go to all nations. So it's not like, what is your religion, Keith? And they say, no, I'm not Catholic. Oh, okay, you're out of my checklist. Our love and our concern should be for all. Good. Next one, who wants to read? New agent. Eric.
This passion will not fail to stir in the church a new sense of mission, which cannot be left to a group of specialists, but must involve the responsibility of all the members of the people of God. Those who have come into genuine contact with Christ cannot keep him for themselves and must proclaim him. A new apostolic outreach is needed, which will be lived as the everyday commitment of Christian communities and groups.
That's John Paul II in Novo Millennio Neunte. And who wants to read Pope Francis, the bold, the new evangelization calls for? Eric, can you continue?
Sure. In virtue of their baptism, all the members of
Jump to the new evangelization calls, the bold.
The new evangelization calls for personal involvement on the part of each of the baptized. Every Christian is challenged here and now to be actively engaged in the evangelization. Indeed, anyone who has truly experienced God's saving love does not need much time or lengthy training to go out and proclaim that love. Every Christian is a missionary to the extent that he or she has encountered the love of God in Christ Jesus. We no longer say that we are disciples and missionaries, but rather that we are always missionary disciples.
So, the second newness is the audience. Like in the past, it was thought, okay, the priests and the sisters, they will do the mission, but just think of this, like, I don't have much contact with falling away. Like, I'm always with, like, you, like, staff, like, I go from the church to the staff, from the church to the hospital, and the hospital to the cemetery, so I live in a very Catholic circle, no? And if it looks to me like everything is great, like 1,800 people come to mass, like I don't want more confessions like that. So, like, it seems like we're doing well, but if you think of those who are not coming, those who have no faith, those who are raising a family without contact to Christianity, and then if you think of all the people you can reach, that's kind of the newness of the new evangelization. Kind of a shift in mentality. Like, I am responsible to continue the mission of Christ. And I think as Robert Byrne was saying, like, it's not ingrained in the Catholic mentality. But it is much ingrained in Protestant circles. You know that, like, why people join a church? Like, in the Catholic, Jewish, and Islam, the majority of people join the church because of family. They are born into that family. So almost the numbers are 80 to 90%. So why, like, they grow mainly because of, like, being born in a family. But when it comes to especially evangelicals, not Protestants more, but evangelical Protestants, 50% of their members, they come because they were evangelized. And well, they train them to evangelize. And this is something that I am questioning, like the Central Society is questioning, like, how can we train lay people to be effective evangelizers? For sure it begins with fire in your heart, love for Jesus. But then there are a lot of things that we can learn, as Marshall was saying, to do or not to do. I just want to read to you a testimony of someone who I think is a great evangelizer. She says, I am helping with Alpha this year in Portland. It has been a great experience so far. I have 3 of my co-workers attending. We were all standing around our office microwaves, heating up our lunches one afternoon, and somehow Catholicism came up. Turns out that most of my younger co-workers are Catholic, and they were all planning on going to Ash Wednesday Mass together. I invited them to St. Michael and invited them to Alpha. All three came. One is a recent convert looking to join a good Catholic young adult community. One is a fallen away Catholic who isn't sure if he really believes in Jesus. And another one was involved in a Human Center when she went to college in Kansas. But she has not practiced her faith since she moved to Portland. I'm super excited that they are joining Alpha. Please keep Dylan, Sam, and Monica in your prayers. These are three, she invited more. But anyway, she works for Hoffman Construction Company and microwave, conversation, like she has this heart for that. She has a lot of personality also. And she invited them to Ash Wednesday Mass and then to Alpha, and they came, and she invited more. Her table is all people who she invited. So that's what many times people need. We're going to speak a lot about like the need of personal testimony. The way of doing evangelization in the Catholic faith is not proselytizing, no? It's invitation, attraction by beauty. I just think if like all the congregation here at St. Mary's had this mindset of like, I want to share my faith, I want to draw people to the Lord. Like the church will be renewed, no? The church will begin to have new faces all the time. So that's part of the new evangelization, of mobilizing like the laity into this work of the new evangelization. And I have many good experiences, no? Like I'm going to put her on the spot, but Jessica invited. How did you invite this lady from Albany to Alpha?
It was at the end of a meeting we were at. Well, we one time went to a conference together in the car. Like 4 of us driving in the car for 4 hours up to Washington, and I asked God to give me a chance to talk about it, and He did. And she mentioned that she was a fallen away Catholic, so I invited her.
And she came, so she's doing Alpha. Imagine that she goes as a retreat, like come back to faith. Like now in RCA we have a mother and a daughter who were invited by Glenn Huerta. They were friends from a long time. She needed that kind of contact, a bridge between her and the church. Just imagine like these 3 people that this woman shares, like they come back to faith. Oh, the tremendous impact that one person can have. And the last newness of the new evangelization is the ardor, method, and expression. This is kind of 3 things that John Paul II has said. Who wants to read? Nick.
Which one?
The content. Number 3.
Number 3. New and adore method of expression. The content remains always the same, the gospel, but the way to express it changes. Look to the future with commitment to a new evangelization, one that is new in its adore, new in its methods, and new in its means of expression. Pope John Paul II to bishops of Latin America and Haiti. Many times this spoke.
The popes. The Pope spoke.
Okay,
it's a new expression.
Many times the Pope speak of the adore of Pentecost. We must rekindle in ourselves the impetus of the beginnings and allow ourselves to be filled with the adore of the apostolic preaching which followed Pentecost. This passion will not fail to stir in the church a new sense of mission, which cannot be left to a group of specialists, but must involve the responsibility of all the members of the people of God. A new apostolic outreach is needed, which will be lived as the everyday commitment of Christian communities and groups.
So we need to rekindle the ardor of the apostolic preaching that followed Pentecost. So when you read the book of the Acts of the Apostles, that's kind of how the church should be. That should be the normal standard, no? And so that new ardor comes with the new Pentecost, with the new Spirit. So the connection of the new evangelization, there is a connection between the new evangelization and the new Pentecost. Also the popes, the 3 last popes have spoke of a new Pentecost, a new anointing in the church to impulse the church to go out. I like this expression, a new sense of mission which cannot be left to a group of specialists, but must involve the responsibility of all the members of the people of God. So a new ardor, the ardor of encountering Jesus alive, the excitement about faith, a new method and a new expression. And I think the church is slowly moving. We are a very big church, a very big ship, so it takes a long time to move like the church and how we're doing things. But in many places we're seeing like what we have been doing in the future is not going to work. We need to respond in new ways. No? The way of doing catechesis, the way of doing sacramental prep, the way of doing parish life, new method, new expressions. Like in the US, there are great examples of new methods. Like the form.org, well, it's more a media thing. But it's a good kind of example of a new expression, a new method, connected with media and technology and well, Matthew Kelly as well and many other groups. So thinking how to express the same content, but in a relevant way, in a bigger way to the world today. Personally, I do believe that Christianity has something to give. That's where the sense of mission begins. Like, the Christianity has something to give today, no? and we should have a lot of hope. The darkness is going to increase, but the light is going to shine more stronger. So we need to be ready, equipped, and with faith. Good. So for homework, you read the article of Peter Grift. It's in the church. It's in the book. This book, Catholics and Protestants, What Can We Learn from Each Other? Peter Grift has chapters that are very short, like 2 or 3 pages. He suffers ADD, according to him. He says this, so he writes very briefly. Yes, that's the article. Okay, let's finish with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and